Welcome everyone to week 7 of Research Methods, and this week we're looking at primary versus secondary data. And I'm not sure how much experience you guys have with primary versus secondary data, so I'm kind of assuming that you haven't done that much work with secondary data necessarily, or at least some of the things that we might be talking about this week. All right. So, what's up today? Well, first off, of course, a few things in the news, and then talking about the difference between primary versus secondary data, some pros and cons of using secondary data, and then I'm going to go through a few sources that I use for secondary data on the internet. All right. By the way, picture that's from opening day for an Aussie Rules football, which is kind of a cross between soccer and rugby and a few other sports in Australia. And this was the opening day for the Gold Coast Suns, which was a brand new team a couple of years ago. All right, in the news. Well, unless some of you have been living under a rock, I'm sure all of you realize that today, well, at least the day that I'm recording this right now, is the U.S. presidential election. And with polls declaring it too close to call, probably by the time you actually watch or listen to this presentation, the results will already be known. Now, while, yes, directly it doesn't affect Canada, indirectly it really has a lot of effect in things from, the economy, Americans coming to Canada, international relations, and even things like the national border controls and things like that. Some of the areas where Canada and US have been working together on security, and this partial discussion around what's called Fortress North America, where you have tougher borders and kind of a more harmonized border control between anybody coming out in and out of North America, but easier flow between Canada and the United States. So huge potential impacts from whoever wins today. As well, cleanup continues for Hurricane Sandy, and again, I'm sure all of you have heard all about it, but one of the things that has been kind of slipping under the radar is the whole thing of the Caribbean, and the fact that they were hit first, but there hasn't been all that much news, especially once it hit the United States. Not a whole lot of news on what's been going on in the Caribbean and the cleanup and all of the impacts and things like that. You really have to search the deeper on all the news services to find out what's going on there. And that's kind of a fairly typical situation where the media will tend to focus on certain aspects that they think are relevant, but a lot of other news stories can slip under the radar and kind of go unreported or essentially unreported. Finally, consumers warned about telemarketing vacation scam. Now, you may want to just pause this presentation right now and copy down or check out that link that I've put there, or even just check out the CBC News for telemarketing scam. And apparently a bunch of people have been called up and told that there's these fantastic travel deals, quite often associated with like WestJet or Aeroplan or Air Miles. And on a personal note, I even got one of those calls, and the minute I heard them say that I was a preferred WestJet member, I knew that immediately it was a scam, because I haven't been flying with WestJet enough, especially not recently, to be anywhere close to being a preferred member of WestJet. So, just one of those heads up situations. All right, primary versus secondary data. Very, I guess very briefly, primary data, you're looking at stuff that's collected specifically for a research problem. And this is where, whoever the researcher has gone out in the field with that research problem, all these research objectives like you've been working on, guys, and they've collected data to solve that problem, to address that research issue. Okay? Versus secondary data, which is information that's already out there. It could be somebody else's research, but secondary data can also be a lot of other bits of information that are kind of floating around or out there that it might not have originally been purposed for a research problem, but it can have a lot of use in research. Some internal sources that I've given as examples, things like annual reports, reports to stockholders, product testing results, periodicals, sales figures, product turnover, any of that sort of stuff that might have had its own purposes when it was originally gathered can actually be repurposed for your needs if you have access to it. Some external sources, things like different government agencies and that, industry associations, other business periodicals, news media, lots of available sources out there, especially now with access to the internet. So, why might you use secondary data? Well, for one thing, if it's useful to your purposes, it's essentially free. There's little or no cost other than the cost of your time to gather it. If you're doing a bit of exploratory research or just checking out a problem or a situation, it can be really handy because it helps to clarify what things you should and maybe should not be focusing on. Give you an idea of where the holes in the information are, things like that. It's very much a viable alternative to conducting your own primary data. But it can also provide you with some ideas on what other people have done so that you're not reinventing the wheel. If somebody's already tested some sort of method of conducting research, even that can be useful to you and for you to just, borrow their ideas somewhere else. As a marketing researcher, potentially it can alert you to some problems or difficulties, issues. Taking a look at, you might be going through your product, the product turnover, and discover that certain products are really flying off the shelves, but other products, there hasn't been a whole lot of interest. Or, you might see these peaks and valleys and give you an idea for things to look into. And it can also just give you some good background information. It, like some of you working on your projects right now, it can help to say, hey, we got an issue here. This is a reason why we need to look into this a bit further. Or here's an opportunity that we might be missing. Other people are picking up on, we haven't picked up on it yet, or no one's picked up on it yet. And here's a place to go. Now, some issues that you may run into. It's not always available, or not always available to you. And this is where sometimes those sort of, connections and networking that can provide you with opportunities to get data that you might not otherwise be able to get to. Reality is it's not always relevant to your problems, to your issues, to your needs. It may not be sufficient to your needs, but it may not be entirely relevant, not accurate enough for you, may not give you all the things, and kind of further to the whole inaccuracy, you really have to be careful when you're using somebody else's data to carefully investigate, who gathered the data, why did they gather the data, who paid for it, who analyzed it, everything, how was it collected? Everything around the research that you guys have been starting to look into, you really need to make sure that it's all relevant and valid and everything like that in order for it to be useful to you. So just be careful when you're using somebody else's information. Now, ways to find secondary info on the net. Academic search engines can be very useful. For example, the library at Royal Roads has access to different journal search engines and things like that can provide you with some good secondary information. I've got the link there in case you didn't know. Some commercial or free search engines that are already on the internet, not only Google, but also Google Scholar is a good source to go through for different access to different publications. Now, it doesn't always get you to look at the actual publication, because not all the publications that it will present to you are available, but what you can sometimes do is use Google Scholar to identify the publications and journals that you want, and then go through something like the library at Royal Roads and use the author's name or the actual title of the article that you're trying to find and get to it that way. One thing that may be overlooked, and you have to be very careful how you use it, mind you, are blogs or web blogs. And there can be some good information through that's available on different thoughts, different ideas, different bits of information. Again, be careful of your source for any of these sort of blogs. Very simply, for those of you that might not have done this before, or maybe a little bit less experienced on some of the searching strategies through the internet, very simple 5-step thing to look at. Start off with careful analyzing your topic and your research objectives, picking out some very key words and phrases, and sometimes it's even useful to check a thesaurus for different ways of looking for that exact same term or phrase. Start into your search engine with that word or phrase, and adding, if necessary, ands or putting quotations around an exact phrase that you're looking for, things like that. As you go through it, watch to see what other words seem to be popping up in some of the references that are displayed, especially with things like your academic search engines and academic papers. If you take a look at some of the papers that you find are particularly relevant, quite often those papers will display a few of the keywords that were in that article, and then you start applying those keywords, if you've missed some of them, into your search terms. Whatever you do, don't let a certain search strategy or whatever get you bogged down. If you start going down a path and you find it useless, go back a few steps and start over or start with a new term. Also critical in this whole process is knowing when to say when. When you start seeing the same articles, the same publications, the same information popping up over and over again, you've probably gone far enough. If you're not finding anything new or relevant, new ideas, you're always getting the same ideas, then you're probably fine. The other thing that's useful is to think about, taking a look at some of the earliest references or some very key references that everyone else seems to be noting, and use that earliest reference or the sort of foundational reference for your information, especially if everyone else is just quoting that same person. A couple of general government data websites. Well, StatsCan, of course, and there's the kind of initial page for StatsCan, BC Stats. Every single province has their own statistics agency, but just as a quick heads up, not all statistics are available for free, so check into it. Sometimes you might be able to get some of your statistics directly from another agency, and just find out what's possible, what's needed. Sometimes the library and some of the universities, for example, Royal Roads, might already have access to certain bits of data that you might otherwise have to pay for. So ask around. The most you're going to get is a no. All right? U.S. Federal Statistics, there's the website there. And even the White House has their own website that you can get some information, some issues as well. They do analyses of the various countries that they do dealings with. So, check into that again, remembering the basis, I guess, behind who's gathering the information and why they're gathering it. When it comes specifically to tourism and hospitality information, now, I guess as a quick step back, I'm going to just give you some of the ones that I've been using and some of the ones that I find useful. But it would also be really good for all of you to be communicating with each other. And, when you find a particularly relevant or useful website, let everyone else in the group know. And by that sort of sharing back and forth and networking of useful websites, then you guys can kind of build on each other's experiences and not only telling each other which are the good sites, but also telling each other which are the bad sites, the ones to, are useless to stay away from. And that can save some of your fellow colleagues a lot of time, so that they're not having to go through these same sort of pain steps that you've gone through. Anyway, UN World Tourism Organization, or UNWTO. It's not directly part of the UN, but it's, I guess, recognized by the UN. And they're a really good website, a really good organization for information around the world regarding tourism. The World Travel and Tourism Council, also a good site or a good organization to get information from. However, you need to understand that they are representing the private sector. So they've got a certain agenda, a certain perspective on tourism. They're very much an advocate for tourism. So there's a lot of information that's on their website that is sometimes a little more, I guess, positive or rosy, a little more optimistic than it might be in other situations. So, that's just kind of a bit of caution when you're using any information from them. Canadian Tourism Commission. They've got quite a wide range of free research that's available. All of the countries that that Canada's targeting and working with as far as tourism, as well as some opening markets, some places where they see opportunities even though the Canadian Tourism Commission might not actually be dealing with them yet. So they've got some good information available for free. Tourism BC, that's the current website, and by the way, I've checked out all of these websites, so all of these are the relevant pages right now, and they've got some good research available for tourism to BC specifically. Again, every province has their own research, their own information available. So Travel Alberta has their own information and things like that. And by the way, if you're ever needing information, most tourism organizations are very, I guess, open and positive to sharing it, especially if you identify yourself as a university student. If you're ever having any problems though, just let me know. And potentially I've already got some contacts within some of these tourism organizations, and I might have a little easier access to some of the information sometimes. Okay? Tourism Industry Association of BC. Formerly it was called the Council of Tourism Associations, but now it's TIA BC. There's their website. And PATA, Pacific Asia Travel Association. Now, it's kind of an organization of a lot of the countries around the Pacific. Several of the Asian countries are part of PATA as well. So they've got all of their own market research, intelligence reports, and all sorts of publications that are available, most if not all, for free. Okay. When it comes to hotel administration and hospitality research, Cornell University School has some good information that's available. As well, Hotel Online, you can see the website there, has several articles and publications and things like that that are available, specifically targeting hotels. U.S. Travel Association has a lot of free research available through their website. Some of it you have to purchase, but some of it, again, it's free. And I guess to kind of repeat, sometimes even with information like this, you might be able to get, if it's something that needs to be purchased, just check with some of the local travel organizations or tourism organizations, and they may already have purchased it, and they may be willing to share it with you already. Okay? So check with some of them. Going a little bit further, I guess first highlighting down at the bottom, Link BC has some good research, and a lot of the research papers are posted with Link BC. But, going a little bit further afield, these are a couple of sites that I had experience with when I was in Australia. Sustainable Tourism CRC, which is the Center for Research Cooperation. There's a website. They've got a lot of really good reports and papers that are available for free download through what's called their bookshop. Now, the CRCs are no longer in operation. There was a special organization or a special arrangement between universities and private organizations and that was operating for several years, but they've fairly recently shut all of that down. However, a lot of their papers are still available for free and for free download. They've got a lot of really good stuff on sustainable tourism. Now they've shifted and they've got a new website called Sustainable Tourism Online. A lot of free documents there. Although, I guess personal opinion, I found that the CRC information, or a lot of it, tended to be better and easier to get to and things like that than the Sustainable Tourism Online website. Alright, so, there's just some websites that I've been using for that secondary information that you might find useful when you're preparing some of your research, or for any of the organizations that you're also working for. Again, as a repeat, if you guys are finding some other websites that I haven't listed there, start sharing some of those and passing it around. Alright, have a good week, guys, and good luck with things, and hopefully all of your assignments are getting done and submitted. Alright, thanks, bye.